In the quiet fishing village of Ethel, the sea was not just water, it was life, a provider, and a keeper of stories. Among these stories, the most cherished was that of Luma, an ancient sea turtle whose wisdom was as deep as the ocean itself. For generations, she had been a silent guardian, her returns to the shore marking seasons of peace and plenty. The villagers saw her as a living compass, a guide sent by the ocean's spirit. This year, however, her return felt different. The air, usually filled with the scent of salt and the laughter of children playing in the shallows, was thick with an unspoken anxiety. Luma sensed it too. The playful currents she once danced in were now laced with a nervous energy, a prelude to a great and terrible storm brewing on the horizon. The sky, a canvas of soft blues and gentle whites, was slowly being consumed by a bruised, purple-gray monster. The villagers watched, their faces etched with worry, their eyes fixed on the darkening sea. They knew the signs. A storm was coming, one unlike any they had seen before. The storm, a violent monsoon named Kale, descended with unimaginable fury. It was a beast of wind and water, tearing at the coastline, its roar drowning out all other sounds. Out at sea, the fishing boats, caught completely off guard by the storm's sudden ferocity, were tossed about like toys in a giant's bath. The fishermen, seasoned and brave, fought to control their vessels, but they were no match for Kale's wrath. Back on shore, their families gathered, their prayers lost in the howl of the wind. Panic began to set in, a cold dread that seeped into their hearts. But as hope dwindled, a familiar, weathered shape emerged from the churning waves. It was Luma. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned her back on the relative safety of the shore and plunged into the maelstrom. The villagers watched in awe and terror as she disappeared into the chaos. Her ancient, wrinkled head set with a fierce determination. She was going after them. The guardian of Ethel was on a rescue mission. Luma's journey was a descent into a liquid hell. The currents, once her allies, were now monstrous. Invisible hands that tried to drag her down, to smash her against the unseen seabed. The water was a chaotic soup of debris-splintered wood from shattered docks, tangled fishing nets that threatened to ensnare her, and the cold, lifeless forms of sea creatures who hadn't been quick enough to escape. Visibility was near zero. She relied on her instincts, on the subtle shifts in water pressure, and the faint, desperate vibrations she could feel through her shell. Predators, drawn by the turmoil, circled in the murky depths. A shadow passed over her large shark, its eyes cold and empty. Luma tucked her limbs in, making herself a smaller target, her powerful beak ready to defend. She was old, her body scarred from 1,000 such battles, but her spirit was unbreakable. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, but the image of the fishermen, of the families waiting on the shore, pushed her forward, stroke by agonizing stroke. She was their only hope, and she would not fail them. After what felt like an eternity, through the roaring darkness, Luma spotted them. The fishing boats, their sails ripped to shreds, were clustered together, drifting helplessly. The men aboard were exhausted, their faces pale with fear and cold, but their relief at seeing her was short. Luma saw what they couldn't. They were being pushed directly towards the dragon's teeth, a notorious stretch of jagged, treacherous rocks that had claimed countless ships over the centuries. To be dashed against them meant certain death. Luma's own body was failing. A deep gash on her flipper throbbed with every movement, and her lungs burned for air. The easy path was to turn back, to save herself and let the sea claim its due. But another path, a half-forgotten memory from her youth, flickered in her mind. A narrow, dangerous passage that wound through the rocks, a secret waterway known only to the oldest creatures of the deep. Navigating it in this storm would be a gamble, a test of her last reserves of strength and ancient knowledge. It was their one chance. Luma looked at the desperate faces on the boats, then towards the shore where an entire village held its breath. The choice was made. Her own life was a small price to pay for theirs. With a powerful surge, Luma positioned herself at the head of the small fleet. She struck her shell against the lead boat's hull, a resounding boom that cut through the storm's roar. It was a command. Follow me. The fishermen, understanding her intent, rallied. They used their remaining oars as rudders, fighting to keep their boats in line behind their unlikely savior. Luma led them into the heart of the dragon's teeth. The water here was a violent, churning vortex. Waves crashed against the rocks, sending spray high into the air, obscuring their path. Luma navigated by memory and instinct, twisting and turning through the razor-sharp maze. She scraped her shell against the stone, the sound like grinding teeth. She guided them past whirlpools that tried to suck them down, and through channels so narrow they barely fit. Time and again, it seemed they would be crushed, but Luma's unwavering guidance saw them through. Finally, after a grueling passage, they emerged on the other side. Before them lay the calm, protected waters of their own bay. The village was in sight. A cheer erupted from the boats, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief and gratitude. Their mission was complete. As the boats drifted safely towards the beach, where joyful families were already wading into the water to greet them, Luma's strength finally gave out. Her body, battered and broken, could go no further. She collapsed in the shallow water, her heavy eyelids fluttering closed. The villagers carefully brought her to the shore, their cheers turning to reverent silence. They tended to her wounds, whispering words of thanks, their tears falling onto her ancient, weathered shell. But Luma's journey was over. She had given everything. As the last of her life ebbed away, she felt a gentle pull, not from the tide, but from the ocean itself, calling her home. With one final, peaceful sigh, she was still. The villagers did not mourn her death. They celebrated her life and her ultimate sacrifice. They carried her body back to the sea, letting the gentle currents take her, as she drifted slowly into the deep, becoming a silhouette against the rising sun. Luma passed from a creature of the sea into a legend, her story forever etched into the heart of the village and the soul of the ocean she so loved. Her name Luma would forever mean light, the light that guided them home. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more.